Hi everyone, I'm Cathy Evans from Inkspot Publishing, and this is my publishing assistant Olivia, and we're delighted to welcome Kate Nash. Introduce Kate properly in a moment, and Taryn DeMailon is doing all the background tech. So I hope everyone can hear me okay, hope everyone sees the recording all right, and anyone mentioned in the in the recording will be given the chance to join the studio towards the end of the recording. And if anyone has any comments or questions, please post them on the live stream, and Olivia will monitor the live stream and make sure all questions are answered. So first of all, thank you so much to everyone who took part in the competition. It was incredibly well subscribed. We had over 800 entries, which meant an awful lot of late night reading, especially over Christmas. And well, it was a really good way to escape all my horrible relatives. But really the standard overall was incredibly high, which is actually, we usually have in all the competitions I've been involved in around about a dozen shortlisted, and Kate very kindly agreed to read double that number just to reflect the number of great entries that we had. So, one of the things I'd like to point out is, although the standard was incredibly high, there were a couple of things that I would love people to take away from this before they enter another competition. And I'm sure Kate will have her own views on this as well. We didn't disqualify anyone on the basis of bad spelling or grammar, but it is an indication of your professionalism, and it really is worth getting your story properly proofread before you submit it to a competition. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think a lot of stories, although they were incredibly well written and very atmospheric, some of them really felt like a first chapter of a much longer piece rather than a complete short story in themselves. And, so a short story is a very different animal to a longer piece, and it needs to be a sort of complete universe in itself. And some of the stories, I think, fell down a little bit on that. Then I think my biggest bugbear, and I'm sure I've written a blog piece about this somewhere, is some of the stories start out so well and they have great characters and a very interesting theme or idea, and they just end in a very flat way. They sort of fizzle out and they don't end in a satisfactory way. Endings are probably the hardest thing to get right, not only in short stories, but in longer pieces as well. But it's really worth thinking about how you finish your piece. And then there was a couple of cases in the 800 where there was one story in particular I felt was incredibly strong, and I really would have loved to include it as a shortlisted entry, but it included music lyrics without attribution, and that breaks all sorts of copyright rules, and therefore I couldn't include it in the final shortlist, and that is really worth bearing in mind as well. So after all of that lecturing, I'm going to introduce you to Kate Nash, who very kindly read our the shortlist, and I love her choices. She's chosen 3 incredibly strong stories, and she might comment on a few others as well. And Kate runs the Kate Nash Literary Agency, and she's been involved in competitions before. And apparently you're running a romance competition at the moment, Kate, is that right?
We are, yes, just in case there's any romance writers. We're running that in conjunction with the Meet Cute Festival. What a great name for a romance fiction festival. So they were, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'll hand over to you then, Kate. You're, and you can tell us how you responded to these stories.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was extremely pleased actually to be invited to not have to do the hard work of reading 800 stories. I get to do the very exciting bit of picking winners from the incredibly strong shortlist, which was 21 stories altogether. And it's worth just sort of saying a few words about those. I've got a bit of a theory about fiction, which is that when real life is very, very dark, fiction gets more uplifting and vice versa. And I think we're in tough times at the moment. And I think a lot of themes kind of came through across the board in the shortlisted entries, to do with the human condition, to do with resilience, but also grasping at things that are difficult to comprehend and articulate and cope with, such as loss and grief, about relationships that haven't quite, aren't quite working or are broken or need fixing. Perhaps they're relationships that can't easily be fixed. There is no easy solution in some of these stories. There's also a lot of deception and kind of how we deal with that. But there's also lots of themes of friendship and community. Not in every story. Some stories, a lot of people died. But I'm looking for the commonalities. Every single one of the 21 entries did, as Cathy explains, it was a complete short story. And this is really, really important. You're taking I don't need to tell you this, but you kind of know you're taking that reader on a journey from beginning to end, and you've not got very many words, not really, to kind of deliver a whole story that has a kind of arc, and has resonance and has that character development and maybe has twists and has plots. There's quite a lot to do in there. So I'm going to talk about the stories which I picked out of the 21. I decided on 2 honourable mentions, so I'm going to talk about those first. I'll talk about them generally and then tell you what they are. They were both stories that had, I think, a kind of what I'm going to call a fully formed plot. And I do think to being able to deliver that in the short story genre is difficult. So extra marks for that. The first one I'm going to talk about is called Better the Devil, and that's by Diana Ashman. I don't know if we get to do a little applause here for being an honourable.
Well done, Diana.
Well done, Diana. I think this was, what you did here was you had excellent world building. I was just utterly convinced by this world. I was straight in there straight away, and there was just so much conflict, and it was all so realistic and well done. And then your twists were just absolutely unguessable. So well done. You delivered that kind of fully formed plot. You delivered what is, to me, felt tantamount to a kind of mini feature film in the vehicle of a short story. That's very, very impressive.
Yes, and I was very happy with what you said, that you thought it could be a film.
Very, very cinematic. Yes, I felt it could be there was a lot of plot there, and I think you delivered it. I think it'd be very difficult to sort of deliver a lot of plot in not too many words, but you did pull it off incredibly. So we had a sort of fully kind of plotted, twists and characters, and we got to a sort of satisfying end. I mean, there's not happy circumstances going on in your story, but we had a very satisfying ending.
Yes, definitely. And by the way, Diana, I'm South African as well. And when I read the story, although it came across as, set in America, somewhere like the Deep South, I also felt it could have taken place in somewhere like the Transvaal or Natal, or, the same set of circumstances could have played out anywhere in places like that. So,
I really wanted. I wanted to set it. I thought I can't set it in South Africa because I'm in Cape Town and I couldn't imagine it working. But now that you say the Transvaal, that makes sense. I only set it there because I wanted a ranch. I wanted a ranch feeling. I think the
Yeah,
connection
and which
is,
you totally succeeded. And it's only when I found out you were, sorry, there's a bit of a delay going on, but the
yes.
reason I thought of the transfer, when I read your story, mentally, I was at my grandparents' house in the Transvaal, in a little, in outside a place called Bethel, and that's where I set your story. So
Bethel. Oh,
in my head.
wonderful. Yeah,
Hmm.
I just wanted to write a story that would have, foreshadowing and a feeling of something ominous was going to happen, but to build it subtly and have levels and levels. And, the theme was of secrets that would be unraveled and, domestic abuse, domestic violence, and how the heat, I wanted to write about heat. I wanted to have activity. And yeah, for me, the story was about, making the attempt to write it in such a way that everything worked in layers and that the twist at the end, would take you by surprise.
Which you totally succeeded, as Kate said. It was such an atmospheric story, and you read it with this sense of dread, so
And
it
I'm
was
so
very well
glad.
done.
I'm so glad. Thank you
Yeah,
very
and these
much.
aren't easy. They're not easy themes to yeah, not easy themes to always write about. So, but you had the reader there for the whole story.
Do you have any
Yeah,
advice for me? Or
exactly.
do I
And I think
just,
if it can be summed up, no, actually I don't. I think you did it really well. I was
Keep
just going
writing.
to say, I was just going to say, without introducing any spoilers, the best way to sum up this story is out of the frying pan into the fire. So,
with,
and
with
I'm
the
not going to say
title?
anything else because I'll give
Mm.
away too much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much.
And then the other honourable mention is Flint Hills, Kansas, by
Hmm.
John Rex.
Yeah, well done, John. Yeah, really, I love that story as well. Yeah.
And here we had incredibly strong characterisation. There was something about this story that reminded me of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland and a bit of an F. Scott Fitzgerald. We were in a very out of the way place with an out of the way character. We had an older character who wasn't clear quite what was happening and what was going on, and all that was sort of very tense for the reader as you carried us through that story and you painted that picture and you painted those landscapes so vividly, the rural landscapes. I really, really enjoyed that. It was moving. I don't think there was any way we could guess at the twist of the end, unguessable to me. And also, we weren't kind of quite sure with the twist, but in a good way. I mean, emotionally unsure. I wasn't sure at the end of your story whether I really liked any of the characters, but that didn't matter because that wasn't the point of this story. The point of this story was to show us really how this world, wasn't fair and probably wasn't just. And probably is full of deception. But, there were beautiful mountains, which I think is a metaphor for life, probably. So I'm going to move on now to our top three.
Okay.
No, I feel I should have a drum roll for these kind of things.
Olivia, drum roll.
Bit of a drum roll. Okay, so I will obviously, as tradition dictates, sort of announce these in reverse order. So in third place, we have a story which is I've got it out. What I'm doing is not writing. Oh, sorry, hang on, wrong bit of paper. Right, Blurring Out the North Circular by Cool Deep Store.
Great story.
This was a great. This was a story where I think I gave absolute top marks for characterisation. I was absolutely there from the first opening sentences. And here we had a character where what was really impressive was that character's arc and that character's growth and that character's learning. So we start with a character who has got preconceived ideas, and then we end with a character who has been challenged by what's around her and the reality around her, and the challenges of what other people are saying to that character. And again, to deliver that within this short format, and show us that kind of character growth, and show us those kind of morally grey, complex kind of things that people are going to be thinking about and trying to deal with in their lives, in a really kind of realistic setting. I really enjoyed this. It had a lot to say about our identity and our kind of place in the world, and what people and what we should be doing and shouldn't be doing as communities. I think that social commentary was really impressive. So well done, and absolutely justified third place. I should just mention for any international people watching, the North Circular is a road, that sort of a ring road that goes around London. Before we had a motorway, it was the big one that ran as a ring. There was a ring road around London. That was the north part of it.
Hi, Kuldeep.
Hello.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Yeah, thank you for coming along, and many congratulations. This was such a great story. One of the things I wanted to know is really what your inspiration was behind the story and behind the character.
Well,
was there something that's happened in real life, or something you've heard about, perhaps, that my sense was might be behind that?
Well, first of all, can I just thank you all for this competition? I'm just a reader who wanted a chance to say something, and thank you for listening. Well, for reading, and I thank you for that. Yes, I deal with patients, and sometimes I'm guilty of compassion fatigue when it gets too much, when and you forget sometimes to look for the story behind the human, and we all have our own stuff going on, and every now and again something happens to jerk you out of that pattern, and I just wanted to sort of I've invented a character that has too much going on, perhaps, and could be forgiven for everything that she's got going on, but even she needs to be jerked out of it. Yeah.
So is it based on personal experience?
Sort of. If anything, I'm the poorly dressed, overweight doctor at the end, but who's being judged by the character.
And who surprises her?
Yes.
Yes.
By challenging her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
by she wanted us, the whole reason she's not doing things online is because she's wanting to go out and meet people and look at smartly dressed people, the right sort of people, and so she wasn't expecting to be challenged by somebody who looked like she was dressed out of a charity shop.
Well, I thought it was a very worthy winner. Well done.
Thank you.
So
no, but
really impressive.
Thank you for this competition for middle-aged mums like me. Thank you.
Oh, but we've got another one going on, which is a
middle-aged mum one.
Yes, we'll restrict our categories very to anyway. But it's a flash fiction competition at the moment, and I think our closing deadline's next month. But it's even more of a challenge. You have to build a world and characters in 500 words or less, which is quite a challenge. But yeah.
Thank you.
So, anyway, huge congratulations, and I hope you carry on writing, because you've definitely got such a the way that you painted this world so quickly and drew us in was really impressive.
Thank you very much. Thank you for reading. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you. And our second place story is called, I hopefully pronounced this right, Fuchka Geometry.
Fuchka, I think.
Fuchka Geometry, and that is by Susmita Mukherjee.
Congratulations, Susmita.
I absolutely loved this setting and this story, and I loved the characters and I loved the community, and this story just delivered that community. Again, this is a short story that probably as many of the stories on our shortlist of 21 could probably be developed into a longer work. But what we delivered in the space of that short story was a tale about, a local market stall holder, his ideas about, how the world should be, his experimentation, his challenges to his community, and that one man challenging the community, and how that community responded, and how those sands shifted when he shifted those challenges, which, as you may guess from the story's title, he was using geometry. I don't know anything about geometry, so I hope that all the calculations and things in there are correct. I don't know, but I was utterly convinced by the story and by the challenges, and how the philosophy kind of came in as well. So the answer to some of the geometry questions weren't just maths; they were philosophical, and I think that was particularly enjoyable and sort of challenging. And I think the place that character and not just the character but the whole community, you delivered a character arc for a whole community in the space of a short story. Very, very impressive. So well done.
And it was so much fun to read, wasn't it? Really, it was very a fun story. So, as well as all of the things you've just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think these are are the stories going to be available to read, I think?
Yeah, so we're going to put them all on our website, obviously with the author's permission. So.
Yes, I would encourage those people, everybody here, do have a look at the stories that have won, and sort of see, they're great. They're all well worthy of publication, I would say, that's for sure. So the winner, and unfortunately there can only be one winner, and gosh, it was close at the top, I have to say this, but there can only be one winner, and the winner is Sound of Moss Falling by Adrian Paul.
Congratulations, Adrian.
So, The Sound of Moss Falling, let me try and tell this a bit like a story. You have moss growing on your roof. And I think what this story says is that very, very small things like how you deal with a piece of moss, or how important that moss on a piece of roof that might have fallen off and then could make a path slippy, how important was that to the main character as a kind of microcosm of a much, much wider world problem. This was an elderly character who was struggling in the world, and therefore the moss was out of proportion in her mind. But what made this story interesting was the dynamics between the three main characters. So you had her son, and you had the daughter-in-law who had come to visit his mother, and we moved between scenes taking place at the mother's house during the visit to scenes before and afterwards with the husband and wife together on the motorway. And the way that we kind of shifted in these short scenes, again, within this very compact short story form, I just thought was incredibly insightful. This story explored the problems of growing old, alone, not having all your physical and perhaps mental capacity to deal with everything. And how does your family cope with that? How do they cope with the guilt? How do they cope with the responsibility? And all these things were explored. And it was difficult. The characters cannot be perfect ciphers, because we all know the stress that can be put on relationships when they are there are obligations and they are stressful, and that you are losing somebody slowly that you didn't you're not in control of. And I think how those characters kind of all reacted, all three of them, with the lack of control, was really what made this story incredibly emotionally impressive. And I think because of that, it is a worthy winner.
Excellent.
It was
such a good, yeah, exactly. And in fact, if I can interrupt you there, Kate, I can read out the first few paragraphs. We're not going to read the whole thing, because we'd really like to encourage people to take their time over these stories and read them for themselves on the website. But so the beginning of the story is as follows. Clumps of moss have been falling off the roof of my mother's bungalow. This has happened throughout the years she's lived there. Only lately has it become a focus for her concern. It's ever since the funeral, which is almost 6 months now. She mentions it whenever we speak on the phone. It mucks up the path, she says. Makes everything slippery. Someone might hurt themselves. It's horrendous. I can't tell you. My mother wants the moss not to exist. She would like it eradicated from her life. Can you do something about it when you next come? Well, I say, I'll have a look. In truth, I'm not sure what I can do. There's an eternal conjugation at play here. There is moss on the roof. There has always been moss on the roof. There will always be. You get the idea. The moss tumbles off the roof and onto the path in front of the house. That's what moss does. Will always do. Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
Maya and I drive up to my mother's on a Thursday evening. Maya picks me up after work. She's organised. She comes provisioned with drinks and snacks for the journey. A flask of tea, those packets of fruit juice with a little straw stuck to the side, cake, cereal bars, bags of crisps. We have a target arrival time. The idea is to eat dinner with my mother. She likes to eat early at 6 and have the washing up done by 7. At home, Maya and I are much later eaters, around 8. We need to be adaptable with my mother. Flexibility is the name of the game. The idea is to avoid causing her any distress. She's teetering nowadays. I'll leave it there, because that gives you've got the son who feels very conflicted about his mother's issues. The mother clearly who, as Kate alluded to, everything's narrowing in on her and she's losing control. And the moss is symbolic of, of the external factors in her life that she's lost control over. And then the daughter-in-law, who's very organized and approaches every problem from a logical perspective. And actually, in this case, there really is not much of a solution. Adrian has just joined.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
Okay, I'm coming in live from Kobe in Japan.
Oh,
Wow,
nice. Is that where you live?
No, I'm just traveling.
So it must be what time in the morning? I don't even want to think about what time it is in the morning.
It's quite late.
I was going to say, yeah. Well, congratulations. You
Thank you very much indeed. I'm very flattered and honoured to have been selected as the winner. So thank you very much for your effort in reading my story and appreciating it. Thank you.
Oh, absolute pleasure. And also, you were the top story amongst 800. So
Wow.
that, so, and obviously you really impressed two of us. I was the one who put you on the shortlist and Kate's the one who picked you as the winner. So congratulations.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Congratulations. I said quite a few words actually about your story earlier, so hopefully you can catch up on those.
I did hear it. Yeah, I was
you
able
did
to hear you
us?
before.
Great, because I'm
Yeah.
worried about trying to repeat myself and then missing
No,
something.
I did hear it. So thank you for those kind words.
Super. So no, many congratulations. And I did, again, I wondered if your story had been sort of inspired at all by any experiences that you've had yourself or perhaps you've known about.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the question is to what extent is it biographical? I think there are lots of moments in the story which have their roots in a biographical space, but the overall conception is a collection of incidents put together and reworked and fashioned into something, a fictional, imaginative work of those biographical realities, if I can put it like that.
No, yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Are
I mean,
you a frequent writer, or are you have you worked on other things as well?
yes, I have. I've been dabbling for many years with minimal success, I guess. I mean, I think this story is very typical for me in the sense that it started out life, parts of it probably in different stories, and it's, for me, writing is probably 90% editing rather than writing, if you see what I mean. And it's about reworking things and pulling things together, and then eventually it clicks and you think, yeah, that belongs with that. And that's really how this came together. I had certain episodes in my head that I knew there was something there, like the moss on the roof, and I think that is a central metaphor I had in my head for quite a long time. and I knew I wanted to do something with it, and then it seemed to come together as as I say, a central metaphor for sort of continuity versus change, and permanence and impermanence, and that seemed to chime with my experiences of being grieving myself and my mother grieving, and how one copes with that, and with the infirmity of aging. Those ideas about movement in through time and aging, and contrasted. And then there's a brief mention of the daughter in the story as well. So you've got the next generation, you've got generational transitions going on. So I kind of wanted to put that in as well, and get across something about the movement of time. And for the narrator, the moss cleaning up becomes a kind of almost, I didn't want to overplay this, but there's a bit of healing going on there for him as he does that job. He doesn't do it like his father has done it. His father did it much more sort of comprehensively, got up on the roof, whereas the son hasn't got that aptitude, but he finds something in that act which helps him, and I think by the end of the story he's got some degree of learning, and there's some kind of character building has happened to him through that act. I think I'd like to think anyway.
No, I think that came across really strongly, actually. And I think that, to me, it was just, thinking about, sons trying to kind of, they don't want to, try and live up to their fathers or challenge them. But I think because you're in this sort of world really where, people aren't in control, it did give that sense that there was something. You're not entirely helpless. You can do something, even as you say, even if it's not your kind of natural aptitude at that moment. You have got a role to play, and it's kind of important. So I think the
Yes.
kind of reader sort of felt that, as well as the character.
Well,
Good.
thank you so much for joining, Adrian. It was great to hear from you.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
And enjoy the rest of your time in Japan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm sure you'll probably seeing many bits of inspiration for future stories while you're travelling. So we shall look out for those. But yes, congratulations again. And
Thank you.
I do think hopefully if this story can be kind of read, it is going to touch readers, because of its emotional journey.
I hope everyone who listens, who were not part of the 5 stories mentioned, or takes a bit of inspiration from how to basically not get yourself disqualified next time. And also to bear in mind that inevitably in any competition there is such a huge element of subjectivity, in terms of personal taste, and and not only that, I think there's also the same story, if read on different days, will produce a different outcome. Often your reaction to a story is very dictated by your own personal mood, and so there's an element of luck involved as well. I think that's inevitable, but I'm so grateful for everyone who took part. And I'd also like to just say a word to our sponsors, WPP Elevate. Thank you so much for sponsoring and for supporting creativity, and for supporting a small publishing group, and for promoting literature generally, because that is, in writing, it is such a brilliant way of sharing experience, whether it's, because all of these stories, no matter how fictional, they have an element of, that there's a link there to the universal, and that's what really makes literature so amazing. So, and I'll just stop banging on because I'm getting all schmaltzy and philosophical. So is there anything I've forgotten to mention or say, or?
I don't think so. Yeah, good job.
But Kate, thank you for reading those stories with such incredible care, and I couldn't have agreed more with all of your conclusions. So
Brilliant. No, it was a real pleasure, and I hope everyone who entered the competition, who hasn't been in the winning selection, or hasn't been shortlisted, keeps writing. I think it's very important. We need writers writers are important, whatever anyone else tells you. You know, keep entering competitions. You know, you will, and read the winning stories. You will. You know, writing's hard work. You get better at it the more you do, generally, like anything.
Yes.
Regard it like learning to play the piano or painting a picture or something. You know, you can have a very, very sort of good, talented, you know, first attempt, and you might get lucky, but you know, you're going to get better sort of technically the more you practice.
Agreed. Anyway, so thank you so much to everyone who's taken part today, and do check out our website for further competitions. And apparently, Kate, you're writing a Substack piece about this. So
Yes, yeah, I'll write up, yeah, because I do get philosophical actually, because I think it's such a kind of privilege to read, you know, a selection of sort of high quality short stories. It's you know, it's a real pleasure, and it makes you think. Why wouldn't it? So you know, I will get philosophical, which is I'm sure you can hear that from some things I'm saying,
Yes.
because I do think writing is a reflection of a reality. So it's, you know, making me think, and it's always making me think about the kind of world around us, because I think writers are always a product of, you know, where they are in the world. Can't help it. We can't escape it. Sorry.
Well, so look out for Kate's Substack, and do, you know, keep entering competitions. Thank you so much for everyone for taking part.